What is going on, everyone? Today we're talking running backs. If you haven't seen my previous videos, I did one on quarterbacks and I did one on tight ends. And today we're going over to running backs. Now, last year, there was a large portion of people that were going super heavy on wide receiver. I was one of them with varying results, kind of getting your butt kicked by someone like Saquon Barkley or someone like Derrick Henry, but having a couple of good teams as well because you picked up someone like Bucky Irving. Now, because the running backs did so good last year, the top end running backs did so good last year, lots of people are going heavy running back now, even people that seemed to be much more heavy wide receiver the previous year. On DK, which is where these ADPs are coming from, they're traditionally even heavier on running back, also heavier on QB compared to underdog, where underdog seems to be favoring the wide receivers a little bit more than the running backs and QBs. But anyways, here's the board, and I want to go through how I kind of broke it down, some thoughts I have. We got three drafts to look at as well, and maybe see if we liked them or don't like them from a running back perspective. You can see over here on the right hand side, I've broken down the board into 5 categories. It's really kind of like 3 categories, and then there's subcategories within there. There's the high end players. There's then the players that have questions, some that are old, some that are young. And then we have this group in the middle where the market just doesn't know. And then we have the unknown, projectable, unknown for a number of reasons, types of players, either ones that could have some juice and those that just could have some volume, basically. So really, it's got like 1 category, 2 categories, 3 categories, 4 categories total. I did break those down into subcategories, like I said. So if you count the subcategories, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories total. Well, going through this, I feel like there's a large portion of people now that are overweight on these first 3 rounds, this high-end category. Like overweight with all of them. And I'm not there yet when it comes to the high-end ones. I do have some interest in certain ones because we're so early in the season. But right now, my strategy mainly is to let the draft come to me for the most part when it comes to these high-end running backs. Maybe taking them at ADP at worst for the most part, but in general, probably not trying to take them ahead ADP, or at least not often taking them ahead of ADP. I can see with this group being below, like fading all of them to a certain extent. So not like heavily fading them, but instead of having your 8% for all of them, having 5 or 6% of most of them instead. The reason being is because the theory that was out there before still holds true for the most part, in that these running backs, while they, are the highest end players, they're expected to do the best. From a health perspective, I still think it's more likely, and I'm pretty sure there's data out there to explain it. Probably should have looked it up. Maybe I will in another video. That the running backs are more likely to get hurt, even though last year it was definitely the wide receivers that ended up getting hurt more often. And if your running backs are more likely to get hurt, you're more likely to lose teams this way. Also, and maybe even more importantly, the wide receivers at the top are the most talented wide receivers. They're the ones that are expected to get the most, like earn the most volume or the most targets, because a talented wide receiver is earning targets, while you don't have to be a talented running back to earn carries. Sometimes it just happens to be that you're in the right place at the right time to earn carries. So if you find the right people in the right places lower in the draft at running back, you can end up with a large percentage of the same points as someone towards the top. because of the volume the person towards the bottom got. While on the flip side, if I draft the wide receivers down at the bottom, unless they prove to be the uber talented player, they're probably not going to demand the targets that the top end players are going to get. So you can replace your running backs much easier if they have a spot versus harder to replace your wide receivers because the most talented players are getting drafted towards the top. And it's only that outlier one that you didn't realize was as talented that's going to make their way and bubble them up to the top in the following years. More recently, the uber talented rookie wide receivers are getting pulled up higher and higher and higher. For example, last year we had Malik Neighbors that was getting pulled up where's he? He's right here. That was getting pulled up into the second or early third round, depending on when you were drafting. We also had Marvin Harrison, who was getting pulled up in the first round last year, and even Roma Dunze, who was getting drafted in the probably around the same point, fourth, fifth round, maybe the sixth, something like that, around here last year as well. The one outlier in a way was kind of two outliers, I should say, were kind of Brian Thomas and Ladd McConkey from last year, and that they were getting more drafted around maybe the 8, 9, 10 range, depending on time of year. And turns out that as a whole, the entire market didn't really understand how talented they were or how they could convert that talent into fantasy points is probably a better way to put it. So now they're being drafted up here, but are we able to find that next person that's uber talented like them that's going to be in the right landing spot and get all the targets? It's hard to predict that. So because of that, I still think you want to be heavier wide receiver early on and probably fade these players to a certain extent. Now, this early in the year, the one exception of the top end that I'm doing right now, and we'll see this because I'm maybe playing a little risky, is I am drafting Ashton Jeanty over. I'm overweight on Ashton Jeanty. Basically, I'm hoping, I think, that if he does get the right landing spot, for example, if he goes to the Cowboys or the Bears, so he gets drafted relatively early and he gets drafted to a team that doesn't have a stud running back, that he will get pushed up to Bijan level from his rookie year. Bijan, his rookie year, was getting drafted in the first round. And so I'm hoping that Ashton Jeanty gets pulled up instead of being a pick somewhere in the first half of the second round. Oftentimes, he starts to get pulled up all the way into maybe the middle of the first, middle, or like maybe like the second, third of the first, or something like that. If that happens, I probably won't draft as much of him once he gets pulled up. So I'd like to have him and get some interesting teams before his value climbs. I then have the next category here, and these are the questionable players, either those that are old with what I'm calling projectable volume, or the young ones in general. And I chose these two categories based on age, right? So if you're 28 or older, you go into the old category. If you're less than 28, you go into the young category. And I think in general, it works. There are a couple people, though, that fall into into one of these two categories that catch my eye and make me think maybe I should be drafting them more than I am already, or just maybe continue drafting them if I'm overweight them already for some reason. Now, those players are, number one, Chase Brown. You always want to, or not always, but we always talk about wanting to potentially lean into the uncertainty a little bit. And similar to Ashton Jeanty, I think there might be some uncertainty with this Chase Brown in the fourth round thing. When he started drafting, and I was looking at drafts that are happening on Underdog, he was getting taken, I believe, at like the 2-3 turn. People have started talking about how the Bengals could draft a running back, and that running back could take away a lot of volume from Chase Brown. And then if you even think about last year, Chase Brown's profile, there were a lot of people that weren't a fan of him and thought that you should be drafting the other, um, the Zach Moss heavier than Chase Brown. Now there was tons of people that thought that Chase Brown was the one you needed, and they turned out to be right. Who knows if that's because of injury or just talent? But basically, there's some uncertainty now based on the draft more than his ability to succeed in this offense. If they don't draft someone, does he start getting pulled back up into the 2-3 turn versus the back half of the fourth round? Because of that, I feel like I haven't drafted him all, by the way, but I feel like I need to maybe draft him equal weight at least. And again, maybe heavy. The problem is that he does go around some interesting players like Xavier Worthy, Devontae Adams, who just got a new contract, new team, new quarterback, and people think that he's going to get pulled up as well or keep on rising. But he goes with some interesting people: Xavier Worthy, Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, to name a few, or to name basically all of them that kind of go around him that are interesting. So it's hard to go overweight on Chase Brown, but I think I need to think about which of these players I should be taking less of, maybe, or how to mix them better a little bit. I could see myself, I guess, taking Chase Brown over any of these players from Hurts, McLaurin. Cook's another running back. Cook, Wilson. Let's just go with the non-running back one. So Hurts, McLaurin, Wilson, Evans, Burrow, Harrison, Moore, Adams, Worthy. I guess I could see myself taking Brown over any of those players, especially the non-wide receiver ones, so the QBs essentially. So I gotta consider how to make sure that I have enough of him in case that does happen. On the flip side, if the Bengals do draft another running back, which probably won't be in like the first round. I don't even know what their picks are. We should probably look that up too. But it's probably not going to be the first round, maybe not even the second round, because they do have lots of other needs and they have it drafted or signed it, committed so much salary to the offense that you'd think they're going to commit maybe some of those picks or a good amount of those picks to the defense, which means that even if they do take a running back, is it a running back to supplant Chase Brown or a running back to maybe play a different role and probably less of a role compared to the role that Chase Brown gets for the year. So I do think Chase Brown is a player that maybe we want to lean into right now, because once he starts going with the likes of like JSN, T. Higgins, like if he starts going over here ahead of these players, maybe he gets a little harder to take, or maybe if we know that there isn't other running back, that we still take him at that point in time. I do think that all these players, there's a lot of question marks on all of them. That being said, things have maybe become a little more clear with some of these players as well, and make you want to take some of them slightly more often. But there's a little bit of my thought process here is why I think I maybe want to be at least equal weight on Chase Brown, and I haven't drafted him yet, so I need to get him a couple times here to kind of catch up, find the right spots to do so. The other two that I find interesting are Hubbard and Kenneth Walker, and actually Tyrone Tracy. These three I find interesting. The reason I find these three interesting is because I have them in the young with questions camp, but two of them, while young, and I guess they're young, I don't think they have the same questions as the rest of the players here. And so really, I do think maybe even Hubbard and Walker are in a different tier than Tracy. So I'll just talk Hubbard and Walker first. While the rest of the young players here have very significant threats to their volume or just totally unknown because they're rookies and things like that, I think these two are kind of locked in. And if they're locked in, are we just questioning if their offense is good enough and that's why they're here? Why are they not going a little bit earlier, like with Alvin Kamara or with Joe Mixon and Chase Brown? Why are they going a little further? It's not like the Texans had a great offense last year, and they've now traded away one of their best offensive linemen as well. So these are two players also that I think I need to at least be at weight on. And then I'd consider taking them over all the way to at least Zay Flowers, if not even like, I mean, even these guys have question marks. What's their offense? The Eagles' offense has to look better. So I would hate to take them over Devonta Smith because what if the Eagles' offense looks better? What if they actually pass the ball next year a little bit? Um, but it's by this fourth round, there's already question marks all the way to I don't know to here. Marvin Harrison Jr. Mike Evans seems locked in. He's older, so you can put the question marks even in the third round. There's lots of question marks at running back, or sorry, at wide receiver. And I don't think there's question marks on what these two are going to get as far as talented people that are going to get lots of volume. I'm not saying you should overdraft them. I'm just saying that if you are still in the camp of drafting wide receivers more often, I think we want to take advantage of at least taking these players when they fall, and especially some of them more than others, like these two right here, I think fall into a camp that's different than those around them. I kind of view Tyrone Tracy similar to Chase Brown. Tyrone Tracy had such low draft capital last year that there's a fear that the Giants draft another running back. That new running back takes Tracy's spot. Now, Tracy is a known pass catcher, or a former receiver. And if they don't draft a running back, then how much farther up does he go in the draft? He's got to go up a round or two, probably. And so I think this is another one similar to Chase Brown where you can kind of lean into it and try to take him where possible. He does fall. So I haven't even taken him ahead of ADP, but he has fallen a significant amount in some of my drafts. So I do have him two or three times already, and not on purpose, just because he's fallen so far past ADP that I kind of just felt like, okay, I'm avoiding running backs. He's available. Let's take him here, type of thing. The rest of this one, not a whole lot to talk about if you ask me. I think all the older players have, we know what they are and we know what their concerns are. And then we have some rookies in here too. Hearing a lot of good things about Hampton overall. So I'm kind of interested to grab him where I can. I've done that a couple times also. We have this little market doesn't know category. The market doesn't know category. It I did have it start J.K. Dobbins, but I included Travis Etienne in it as well. Essentially, starting with a player that we don't know because they're not even on a team yet, and they're not on a team yet, and they're expected to maybe not be on a team uh, after the draft, and they weren't on a team, but now they're on a team with Hubbard. Uh, both of the Jacksonville guys I put in this tier. And part of the reason why I put them both in here, because if you just keep on going through this, not on a team, um, I like Rachaad White actually, I think, because I've heard other people talk about him, but then not on a team also. So basically it kind of starts with the not on a team and ends with the not on a team player. And then I just include everyone else in the middle of those ones into this market doesn't know category because I didn't know where to put them really. I think there's some value here potentially with at least some of these players, especially if you're avoiding the players in rounds 1 through 9. That being said, if you start taking the players in rounds 1 through 9, I think there's a lot of players in this section that you probably want to avoid, right? If I'm taking players in rounds 1 through 9, I probably want to avoid players like Swift, probably White, probably Chubb. I don't know if his upsides, like he seems just to have tons of hype. So I'm really concerned about him. Um, but we won't even put him in the category. So probably Smith, probably White, probably Chubb, probably Dobbins, probably Dowdle. So basically the players that are backups. Um, I mean, I like Sharp, but you can even put Sharp into that as well. I think you want to avoid almost this entire side if you draft heavy running back here, which kind of makes sense also because if you're drafting running back heavy up top, that means you probably got to fill in other positions, and this is kind of like that prime spot to fill in some other positions too. Last but not least, we got our unknown upside juice and projectable volume slash people kind of rising because of news categories. And I put these as, one full category, and then these are broken down to their subcategories here. A lot of players that are, again, younger than less than 28 years old. And then we got certain players on here that are 28 or over that have had news that's pushed them up or just an expectation of volume that's kind of kept them where they are. Javonte Williams, news and volume. Austin Eckler, just volume potentially as the receiving back. Kareem Hunt, news and volume. Mostert, news and potential volume, I guess. Justice Hill, volume, news, right there. We're actually looking at players that are kind of, you can see here, I went put a couple rounds past round 20 as well, just to kind of catch some more players. But you can see even AJ Dillon is starting to kind of creep up there because of news also. There's Zach Moss we were talking about right there. And then we have all the players in the bright green, and these ones are all less than 28 years old. And so there's a little bit of unknown, or there's a little bit of upside, there's a little bit of juice potentially. Now we know more or less about some of them are rookies in here. Other ones have been around the league for a couple of years, but they're still less than 28 years old. And there's you don't know what's going to happen with the player that's in front of them due to performance, injury, whatever else is going on. So I do think that if you think about things this way, it does maybe makes things clear as far as what players you feel like are slightly overvalued or undervalued, possibly not because you think the player's better, but just because of their situation. Again, like Hubbard or Walker or the unknown of someone like Brown or Tracy. When we're looking at this green group over here, I'm actually thinking about this kind of like based on how I drafted above, what am I doing with these picks down here too? Again, if I drafted relatively heavy in the first number of rounds, then I'm probably not going to be taking the projectable volume players, especially if I end up with players in the yellow or in the light red right here, or sorry, not the light red, sorry, in the yellow or the dark red, because these players I expect to have a very significant role and they should be starting from the beginning of the season. Do I need to grab other players that might have a role at least at the beginning, but just don't have the juice to make a difference? Most likely, probably not. So if I'm living in these two categories here, then I'm probably living in this bright green as we get down here and trying to find some players with some unknown upside and juice. While on their side, if I kind of avoid players in the yellow and the dark red, and I maybe grab some players in the light red where there's more unknown and less projectable volume, especially, with some of the rookies and stuff like that, then I probably need to start looking at where do these light green players fall into what I'm doing. Do I want to take someone like an Austin Eckler more likely, or Javonte Williams more likely, or a Justice Hill, a Mostert potentially, I guess. Done Antonio Gibson a couple times grabbed when I grabbed Mayer. Actually, I want to say he's less than 28 years old, so these two should probably be in the light green. Actually, you can kind of see here as I did these last ones. Obviously, I didn't think this through all the way. If I'm not mistaken, these two should be bright green. Ty Chandler should also be bright green. That tells you how I'm thinking about these players right now. Not really impressed with them or expecting a whole lot from them. at all, most likely. So let's jump into a couple drafts. Let's see how I did. If there's anything I could have done differently. Here's the first one. In this first draft, I'm actually drafting out of the number 1 spot. And my first running back was in the 3rd round with Bucky Irving. Got him essentially at ADP, about maybe like a pick after ADP type of thing. And then I ended up with Joe Mixon here at pick number 49. I want to say this is after ADP right here. So he fell in this draft to pick 49. So I just kind of let the draft come to me a little bit to get Bucky and to get Joe Mixon. Now you got 2 guys with projectable that are like, one of them's in the stud category, right? Bucky Irvin. I have here in the high end category. And then I have Joe Mixon here in the old with questions, but more importantly with projectable volume. So because I have these 2 here, I probably am now looking for players with some juice overall, depending on how I draft the rest of the team. And I probably don't need to draft too heavily running backs anymore unless they kind of fall to me a little bit. I want to make sure I focus on my other positions. So you can see here, I focused on wide receiver in the 4th. I got a wide receiver in the 6th and 7th. I got a wide receiver. Not saying that they're the right wide receivers, but I got some wide receivers. Ended up with a falling Baker Mayfield to pair with Bucky Irving. Not the most exciting pairing, but I did it. And then actually had Jaylen Warren fall to me here at pick number 97, the first pick of the 9th round. And while this draft was taken, was done before this ADP change that I have here. You can see here, let's see where Jaylen Warren is. Jaylen Warren is in the 8th round. So you can assume that for the most part, he probably fell half a round or 3/4 of a round to me. So now I have 2 projectable volume players. And then I have, actually, I think Warren is also in this. He's here. I have him in this young with questions. And I do think he actually has some projectable volume also. He might not be the number 1 running back depending on how things go, but he's proven he can get some volume even with another ball carrier on the team. So I do find him to be a nice 3rd running back. And I feel really comfy here with these 3 running backs to the point where I probably don't need another one for a while. You can see I didn't draft my next running back until the last 3 rounds of the draft, 18, 19, 20, where I went with a Lloyd to pair with my Jordan Love. And then I got 2 rookies to end the draft, and LaQuint Allen and Travis Etienne, I believe is what it is. I could have even probably stopped at 5 and then grabbed another wide receiver or something like that with the last pick, or one of these 2 last picks. But I ended up taking 2 running back at the end to end up with the 3-6-8-3. I do like the running back room here, letting it fall to me and ending up with a really solid room, while other teams are, super overly investing in it. And I don't think they're going to get the biggest bang for their buck on that. So, for example, team number 2 here, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Omarion Hampton, and Hubbard, all in the first 4 out of the first 5 picks are running backs. I mean, it might work, but I think it's less likely to work. So that's an example. Over here on the far end of the board, McCaffrey, Genty, Connor, and Tracy. If you got McCaffrey and Genty, and then you took Connor and Tracy back to back as well, I think you could have taken one of those players and then taken someone else with the other player. For example, take Connor, or actually, probably Connor. Just be either one, actually. I don't think it matters a whole lot. They did pull up Tracy here, while Connor's a little bit closer to ADP. So I could see them taking like an Olave here, or any of these wide receivers that they want, especially a Godwin who fell all the way to 71. Good for this team for getting Godwin all the way over there. So any of those players as opposed to a Connor Tracy. So those are 2 examples of really over heavily drafting it. And here's another one, Achane Williams Brown. But that being said, he did get Brown around ADP right here. And he is one that kind of pulls way up. And I could see him, potentially better than these ones. But that being said, you did draft a lot of running backs here. Um, I don't know what you'd want to do differently. Maybe you could even say like take like a Smith to pair with Lamb because they're in the same division or something like that. Might be interesting. Or with Williams, you take Devontae Adams and you're going to do an interesting Ram stack and say that their offense is going to be even better now that they have better wide receivers. So those are two options I think that maybe you have there with that one. Back to my team though, I do think I ended up with a good situation on the running backs. Next one here, last, I'm in the 12 hole now, and this one's the other end of the board. And this one here, I ended up with three running backs in Genty, Hall, and Walker. And I also have a QB here. So I did draft heavy at the onesies and then at running back a little bit. I did tell you guys I want to be overweight on Genty to start. So I took him here with Neighbors. And then Hall fell a pick or two, I believe. I think he's kind of slightly, he's maybe, just a little bit earlier, a pick or two. And so that's an interesting pairing, right? I mean, I think that's a good pairing right there also because Genty's a rookie. I expect him to hopefully land in a spot where he's got volume right away, but still, ideally, you have someone that's more of a veteran that will be able to um, be the stud to start, and then Genty takes over and he either kind of catches up or even surpasses Hall as far as fantasy points go. Now, in letting the room continue to come to me, when I got here to the beginning of the sixth round, Kenneth Walker was still available. Again, he's one of those players I identified as I'd want to be potentially overweight on, or at least equal weight to. And I ended up getting him past ADP here at the beginning of the sixth round, which I do think is a nice pick also. Now, as I'm looking at this, not two things I'm thinking. One, I don't want to invest much more in running back, and I see I didn't because I only have five total. So I like that I didn't invest much more in running back. But number two, I have not invested that heavily in wide receiver. And so I don't know if I should be going to rookies here or if there's something else I could have done differently. The problem I guess we're running into a little bit is, but that being said, I don't think it's much better here with Kenneth Walker, right? So if I don't take Kenneth Walker here, I'm taking a bunch of other players that have a lot of question marks as well. Well, I don't think there's many question marks with Kenneth Walker. I do think there's some upside there with Kenneth Walker too at this pick. So I don't have an answer to that, but what I can tell you is that I like the five running backs. Let's see where I drafted my last two. All the way in the 14th round and the 20th round is where I took my last two running backs. Benson has ADP has dropped to the point where this is, I think, where it's around right now, around the 150s. So I didn't get much value on that after the fact, but that does pair with my Kyler Murray QB, who I got past ADP, and I hadn't had him stacked with anyone yet. And so I do like that I got Benson there to stack with Murray. And I got, Benson can be a pass catching back, so can Connor. But I like that right there, I guess. So five running backs, and the last one's relatively late. What stinks here is I did pass on Harrison to take Hall, which isn't what I would usually do. I'd probably usually take Harrison right here. And of course, the one time that Murray falls is the time that I took Hall instead of Harrison. Wish I would have done that differently now. And then of course also Genty Kenneth Walker is a pretty sweet 1-2 combo. And then of course I got to figure out maybe probably one more running back at least to take. And I don't know when that would happen. Brian Robinson here instead of Mims would be nice. I took this. I guess we're going out of the running backs here a little bit, but I do find this interesting as I'm going back and looking at it. I took the Mims pick here because number one at 109, I took the Mim picks here because I needed someone that was going to not be a rookie and hopefully is just going to be able to hit the ground running on day one for the year. And so Mims, I felt like was the best choice for that. I could have done like Bateman, possibly. Hollywood Brown, like possibly if I'm going further down. So it was kind of an ADP thing and need a need a man on the team. So I know with Mims there. And I think as I scroll down, yeah, I have three rookies on this one, which is a little scary considering I only have two wide receivers up front. So I'm kind of hoping that Neighbors does what he's expected to do. Sutton does what he did last year. I need a rookie to kind of hit the ground running a little bit, or I need um, Mims, and then I got Royals down here, another rookie. I need Mims and Wilson, who are my young but experienced wide receivers to really outperform early on in the season, and then I need something else to happen with this one. So I do think this is a really interesting team. I also have a Ward here correlation with why did I take Ward? Why did I take Ward? There had to be a reason why. Oh, I have Neighbors, and there's a chance that Ward goes to the Giants. And so I got Ward here at pick 180. So I think he was falling pretty good. Yeah, pick 180, I think, is a pretty good fall for Ward, if I'm not mistaken, compared to his ADP. And so I ended up taking him. That being said, the safer pick was probably like a Josh Palmer here. It definitely was a Josh Palmer here, was the safer pick. And then just because I can go two QBs here with Kyler Murray and Jaden Daniels. I know we're getting off track a little bit, but uh, this is for me. So hopefully you enjoy it. I feel like maybe I should have gone someone like where was it? Someone like a Josh Palmer instead of a Cam Ward. Cam Ward's really nice after ADP. I think Josh Palmer's kind of get pulled up. I don't think Josh Palmer's going to do anything fantastic, but you hope he's going to at least get volume at the beginning of the year. And I do feel like my team is rather fragile, especially at the beginning of the year at wide receiver. And hopefully someone like a Josh Palmer could help me get there. So if my team starts off strong, awesome that I didn't draft Josh Palmer. If it starts out slow, I'll be kicking myself maybe. But again, nice. I think it's a good job on the running back front in that getting a player that I ended up wanting to kind of be overweight on here, getting a value on this one, wanting to be overweight on that one due to, again, them maybe getting pulled up later on in the year. And then after hitting those three, waiting until later to get one with some correlation, and then last round. Last team here. First pick again. So we had a first pick, a last pick, and now a first pick. This team here, right away, look at that, 9 running backs. So that tells me that, and you can actually see here, I did not go running back heavy here at all. In fact, 3 wide receivers. I did start with the 2 Cincy guys, and Burrow did happen to come back to me in the 4th round. I was considering whether I should take him here or not, or try to push him back around. When this team here goes and takes Allen and Hurts, so that's one team with 2 QBs. The chances of Burrow then making it all the way around is even less. So I end up taking Burrow here in the 4th, just because you want to at least be able to have this combination once. So I have the combination once now, I can say. I ended up not taking. I could have taken like Mixon here, I guess. That wouldn't have been bad. I did end up taking Rice instead. Not sure why. But I took Rice here instead. I could see myself taking Mixon here because this is around the time Mixon goes. Walker got pulled up way early on this one, but I do kind of like it, right? So if I'm not tied to ADP, I could do that also. Usually I'm not taking my player takes and trying to pull up just random players too much, at least not right now. I don't think I'm smarter than the market, but I do want to try to find out how to balance my rosters and then think about where they're getting drafted to help balance my rosters, and that's kind of where I'm going with it. In the end, and a Pearsall and Reed, Jonnu and Purdy. So Jonnu fell. He hasn't been dropping to here that often, so I took Jonnu. I wanted to actually take Warren. He didn't make it to me. I kind of panicked, and I took Jonnu and Brock Purdy. I took Jonnu because I was like, oh, I got Tyreek Hill. Maybe I can do something there. Then I took Purdy to pair with Pearsall, and I realized I had Burrow already. So I'm kind of done with wide receiver at that point in time. But Jonnu Smith there isn't a horrible pick. It came back to me here in the 10th round. I wanted to go Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet got drafted right before me, so this guy's killing me. So I ended up shoring up my final tight end with someone else that I hadn't drafted much in Goddard. Um, because I wanted to, with this team, I realized I'm going to need a lot of running backs, and I want to do a 2-2, two QB, two tight ends. And so if I get Goddard, I can at least feel like, okay, at least I got two guys in the middle that I can live with if I really want to. So I got the two tight ends. And then I went hardcore running back after that because I got 9 of them. I got to go hardcore running back. Look at the rest of the board here. All running backs up until the last pick, which you can debate it or not. It's a horrible pick overall, but I just didn't think there's anything fantastically better. So I went with Burton to pair. But 9 running backs in a row. Benson at this pick, right? We just said that now he's going around 150. Neal's kind of going down a little bit as well, I think. But I do like the Guerrero pick at 168. I like this pick. I like these picks here. Guerrero, Algier, and Mason in 14, 15, 16. Um, Mason, I definitely think is getting pulled up from there because of the trade. I think this happened. I think I drafted this one maybe slightly before the trade happened. And I did that because, again, I got no running back. So I was like, let me get the 2 backups for the San Francisco 49ers at least. And maybe one of them ends up being a great player or at least a serviceable player. And then the one I'm kind of kicking, and then I got Hill here. I also have Justice Hill in the 17th. I did the same strategy with the Bears. I got Swift in the 11th and then Roshan Johnson in the 18th. I think either of those by themselves aren't the greatest, especially the Johnson pick by itself isn't the greatest pick. I think both of them combined isn't the worst idea if the Bears end up not drafting a player, or if Swift's the one that's kicked to the curb and they keep Johnson, he still has a role, or if they kick Johnson and Swift still has a good role. So I think there's a way this works out potentially for me. And then I got Shipley in the 19th, trying to find someone that, if things break the way for him, he could have a pretty substantial role. And I think Shipley's one of those players. He could have 0 role as well, right? Like if Barkley doesn't get hurt or just proves that he should be getting all the carries still like last year, then Shipley has no role at all. The pick, I'm not saying that I love this, but considering none of the running backs really kind of came back to me for the most part, minus maybe someone in this bucket right here, like a Mixon or a Kamara or something like that, and I took Rice instead. Since none of the running backs came back to me in this draft, I think I made the best of the situation that I had. The pick that I don't like actually is the Benson pick, and it's kind of a hindsight thing. I think Benson was going around here before, and so that's probably why I took him. Also, Arizona and San Francisco, same division, so maybe there was a little bit of that thought as well. If I had to do this right now again, and again, his ADP is back here, and I think Ford and White, at least White's ADP is a little bit over here. And thinking about it, I think White does have potentially more projectable volume than Benson, while Benson maybe has more juice than White, just because White just doesn't have much juice to begin with. But he has shown that he kind of has the passing role, not locked up, but he has been given still a significant passing role. And that passing role has led to multi-touchdown games and things like that. New offensive coordinator, maybe he has even more of a role, or at least an equal role. He could have less of a role too, so you never know. So there's still risk, but I do think that White would be an interesting pick instead of Benson, or even Ford, because right now both these guys have more possibly projectable volume. Even I guess Williams, maybe. Not exciting. But you don't know what the Cowboys are going to do. Maybe they say that Williams will be the starter, but most people are saying he's not going to be the starter. So who knows? Okay. So there's the three drafts that we got. Um, Let me know how I did. Did I make any huge mistakes, especially about running backs? That's what we're talking about, but I wouldn't mind hearing where I made any other gigantic blunders if I had any. Let me know how you feel about the way I broke down the running backs. That helped you out at all, or if it was nonsense. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.